Kurogane, an ugly, disgusting, worthless loser. Hated by his own family for his lack of magic. He was cast out, abandoned by the people who were supposed to love him. With nothing left, he left his home and wandered alone through a raging storm, cold, hungry, and ready to give up on life. But just when the darkness was about to consume him, a lone samurai appeared before him and spoke words that would burn into his soul forever. In that moment, something deep inside Ikki awakened, a power born not from magic, but from the unbreakable will to rise again. From that day onward, he swore to prove the world wrong. Every swing of his blade, every scar, every battle brought him closer to his destiny. And soon, the boy once called the Worst One would stand at the top, the strongest knight in the 7-star tournament. Ikki Kurogane, a teenager who is known as the Worst One throughout his school for his lack of talent, prepares himself for usual morning training. Elsewhere, Stella Vermilion, the princess of the Vermilion Kingdom, is seen arriving in Japan and will enroll in the Hagun Academy. Upon finishing his training, Ikki returns to his room and walks in on a half-naked Stella who was changing as the situation was made worse due to Ikki's bad attempt of getting even by stripping himself. Ikki was then summoned to the director's office where he was criticized by Kurono for his indecent behavior before summoning Stella into her office for Ikki to formally apologize to her. Stella, however, demands Ikki to perform harakiri as an apology, much to Ikki's dismay, who accidentally blurted out that he refuses to commit suicide just over seeing Stella in her underwear. Enraged over Ikki's comment, Stella starts to emit flames with Kurono leaving the office to avoid getting involved. Ikki, in desperation, claims that he was mesmerized by Stella's beauty, surprising the girl as her flames weaken out of shyness. As Ikki tries to explain the situation again, Kurono comes back and reveals that both Ikki and Stella are roommates, much to their surprise. Kurono then brings the two of them to their room and reveals the reasoning to why they are roommates, much to Stella's displeasure, as she gives more impossible demands to Ikki. To solve the problem, Kurono gives both of them the option of settling the issue with a duel, which eventually escalated into a duel with the loser becoming the winner's slave for life under Stella's demand, after Ikki's casual remark on the victor being unknown till they actually fight. Stella is later seen preparing for her match with Ikki as she reminisces her efforts to master her powers and is displeased with how others view her as someone with talent solely. Meanwhile, at the battle arena, Ikki is seen conversing with Kurono on the terms of his graduation, win the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. Stella then arrives at the arena, and their match officially begins with both sides materializing their respective devices. Stella starts the duel by attacking aggressively, but was continuously countered by Ikki, who countered back after copying Stella's sword techniques, almost landing an attack on Stella, but was blocked due to the difference in magic. Stella, while lamenting on winning on her undesired way, activates one of her strongest attack, Cafeteria Salamandra, out of respect towards Ikki. Ikki willingly admits that he lacks the ability as a mage knight, and reveals his trump card, Itushura, which that forcefully removes all of Ikki's physical limits, drastically increasing his powers. Dodging all of Stella's attack, Ikki successfully lands an attack on Stella, winning the duel before collapsing due to exhaustion. Stella is then seen in the hospital room, being taken care of, and Kurono comes to her room. Stella questions Kurono on how Ikki could be an F-rank knight, to which Kurono explains that the system is based on the Blazer's ability, not the actual fighting ability. Stella asks Kurono how Ikki failed, and Kurono explains that it was a complicated situation. Kurono then recommends to Stella to follow Ikki's footsteps, as he is someone who works hard as well. Stella then enters her room to find Ikki asleep on one of the beds. Stella gets on top of Ikki and begins to feel him, becoming shocked at her first touch of a man. Stella then hits her head after Ikki wakes to find what she was doing with him. Stella then talks with Ikki and apologizes for labeling him when she didn't really know him. Ikki smiles and reminds Stella of her servitude to him. Ikki then orders Stella to be his roommate. Stella agrees, and they both bump each other's fist, promising on making their arrangement work. A silver-haired girl is seen on a train, thinking about someone that she loved dearly, having to suffer great pain because of their mother and father. Stella and Ikki are then seen having just finished their daily 20 kilometers run together. Ikki offers Stella a drink from his bottle, who is initially shocked at the offer as it would be an indirect kiss. Stella still takes it, as Ikki talks about his excitement about his sister coming to the school. Yuyuri Orki, the homeroom teacher, introduces herself to all of the freshmen and Ikki. Yuyuri reminds the class that this year's participation for the Seven Sword Art Festival would be dependent on winning selection battles and nothing else, and that they would be informed through their student ID. Yuyuri then cheers on her students to participate in the selection battles, and then quickly throws up blood soon after falling unconscious. Yuyuri is then in the infirmary along with Stella and Ikki. Ikki explains to Stella that it was thanks to Yuyuri that he was able to come to school in the first place. Yuyuri also mentions how unfortunate last year was. Ikki and Stella walk through the hall and Stella asks about what happened last year. Ikki explained he wasn't able to take classes last year, and before he could properly explain further, a girl named Kagami then appears to hug him, causing Stella to get jealous and walk away. Ikki chases after her as the girl with silver hair appears, and Ikki recognizing her as Shizuku, his sister. Shizuku then gives him a kiss to the mouth, shocking everyone in the vicinity, including Ikki and Stella. Stella interrupts before Shizuku is able to kiss Ikki once again, causing Shizuku to become angered with her interruption. Stella explains that she interrupted because she was Ikki's servant and also stated that they had slept together in the same bed. Shizuku then decides to deploy her device, Yashigure, to kill Stella and was confident that she would be able to do so as her element was water. Stella deploys her device in response and the two clash, causing an explosion in the hall. The two were punished with cleaning duty for their actions. After they were done cleaning, Shizuku and Stella continued to argue, causing Shizuku to accidentally bring up Ikki's past and how it felt as though he didn't exist to his family. Shizuku then ended the conversation, leaving for her room. Shizuku is then welcomed back to her room by her roommate Nagi. Stella then meets Ikki outside in front of the school, where she questions him about if he was treated like he never existed by his family. Ikki decides to tell her the truth and depicted how his family had treated over the years. One day Ikki couldn't take it anymore and decided to run away during a very bad snowstorm. The moment he was about to collapse, Ryoma, his grandfather, had appeared to him, encouraging him not to give up. As he carried him back to the home, Ikki continued to explain that his family had even pressured the school in making him fail, to make sure Ikki never becomes a knight. While Ikki and Stella are talking, Shizuku talks with her roommate and tells him about Ikki's situation and how she learned of it. Shizuku then tells him her resolve to give Ikki the fatherly, motherly, brotherly, and sisterly love to him. Ikki is then seen in the bath and Stella comes in wearing a pink bikini, offering to wash his body. Ikki is reluctant, but Stella insists that a servant must serve her master. While washing the front of Ikki's body, Ikki keeps on staring at Stella's bouncing melons in a bikini top. While washing his back, Stella asks Ikki if he likes melons, noticing he enjoyed it when Kagami was hugging him. Ikki admits to liking melons and Stella decides to push her plot armors against Ikki's back, much to Ikki's surprise. Feeling aroused, Ikki wanted to move, but Stella does not want him to. Her bikini top falls off to the floor, which makes her look at her chest cannons. Her bare watermelons were pressing against Ikki's back, which causes her to become red. Ikki notices the bikini top and believes that Stella was naked. She was topless. Becoming angry, Stella slapped Ikki. Ikki and Stella are seen practicing against each other. When the practice had ended, Ikki learns that Stella is going to fight against Momotanni. Ikki tried to tell Stella about her opponent, but she refused his help as she believes these matches are practice for real fights, in which it would be impossible to know what the opponent's abilities were. The first bell had rung to go to class, and before they went back to class, Stella had tried to ask Ikki out, but was interrupted by a message from Shizuku, which Ikki responded to with a yes. It's revealed that Ikki said yes to going out with Shizuku, along with Nagi as well as Stella, who invited herself along. The four Hagan Academy students travel to the mall, where Ikki notices Shizuku looking very well dressed, as Stella was amazed at the mall. Stella tries to hold hands with Ikki after seeing Shizuku do so, but is unable after Shizuku interference. While the students were enjoying the day, mall security was overtaken by terrorists. While at the mall, the students are then seen enjoying some sweets and Shizuku is embarrassed when Ikki reaches to her to clean her face, when it had cream on it. Stella had tried to get Ikki to do the same with her, but ended with different results. Nagi and Ikki go to the bathroom by themselves, where Ikki notes that Shizuku doesn't usually open up to people, yet she is shown to be very close to him and thanked him for being friends with her. Nagi then notes that Ikki is exactly as described, very strong and kind, but also notes something ambiguously. Nagi then quiets Ikki as two terrorists barge into the bathroom, one shooting his guns immediately as he entered. Ikki and Nagi, however, are nowhere to be found. As the terrorists leave, Nagi and Ikki come out of a different dimension, wanting to find out what was going on. Nagi reveals his device, Darkness Hermit, and explains he can move around from the shadows. Ikki and Nagi then appear at the security room, where they find the two security guards knocked out. Ikki called Kurono, who tells Ikki that the situation is already on the news and the police have surrounded the mall, explaining that the terrorist group is Rebellion, a group that consists of people thinking that Blazers are a new breed of human and have attacked the mall in demand of a huge ransom for the hostages. Stella and Shizuku are seen with the hostages, and Shizuku tells Stella not to do anything as she has come up with a plan. Just then a mother is crying out for one of the terrorists to not hurt her son, but to no avail as the terrorist tries to kill the son. He is, however, saved by Stella, who is now revealed. Bishu, who is the leader of the group, appears and begins to berate his subordinate before having a change of thoughts and then turns his own gun on the mother. Stella tries to save the mother, but Bishu is able to stop her and use her own strength against her with his device. He then uses the mother to try and negotiate with Stella to get on her knees and apologize, stripped, angering Ikki, who was watching this unfold at the balcony above. Ikki tries to go down to Stella before she strips some more, but is stopped by Nagi's Shadowbind, who reveals that Shizuku is currently creating a water barrier unnoticed. At that moment, Shizuku uses Shao Iron. Bishu orders his subordinates to shoot the hostage. He then sees Ikki and tries to shoot him, but is unsuccessful as Ikki draws his device and uses his 7-sword technique Ryaiko to cut off one of Bishu's arms. Bishu is then bound by Ikki and his subordinates are knocked unconscious by Stella. Bishu, however, still had one more subordinate, who was hiding among the hostages and demanded Nagi to unbind Bishu by holding a woman hostage again. However, another Hagun Academy Blazer comes and is able to knock out both the subordinate and Bishu, saving everyone. A person appears who is identified by Ikki as Kirihara, who seems to know Ikki as well. The students go outside the mall, and Shizuku and Stella both agree that they didn't like Kirihara, who was currently getting praised by girls. Ikki, however, thanks him for saving them. Kirihara, however, responds by calling Ikki weak, angering Stella, who began to argue that Kirihara was the one who was weak compared to Ikki. Kirihara, however, just laughs and claims Ikki was the one who was too scared to face him in battle. Kirihara then tells Ikki to look at his student handbook, where it is revealed to him that Kirihara will be his first opponent for the selection battle. Kirihara then leaves, calling him the worst one while doing so. Stella battles against Momotanni, and before Momotanni could even land a single strike against Stella, he gave up due to the fear of being covered in Stella's flames. Shizuku and Nagi, while in the locker room, talk about how easy Stella's match was, as Stella was showering as well as revealing that both her and Nagi had won their respective first matches as well. Kagami then barges in, wanting to interview the 3 first years, and Nagi and her quickly become close as both enjoy gossip. Ikki watches one of Kirihara's matches, and had accidentally imagined himself in the position of the helpless girl who was going against him, as she was about to be struck down with one of Kirihara's arrows. Stella then comes in, and they talk about Kirihara's ability, Area Invisibility, allowing him to shoot arrows at Blazers from a safe place. Ikki notices Stella's worry of him, and Ikki assures her that he will win. Ikki then goes on a run, where he runs into Nagi, who wanted to know the story between Kirihara and him, knowing that Ikki and Kirihara had some sort of bloodshed. Ikki recollected his first year at Hagun Academy, as he told Nagi the story. Ikki told Nagi that the head of the Kurogane family had connections to the director of the school at the time, and the director was looking for a reason to get him expelled. Ikki then remembers his first year in the academy, where he met a fellow first-year Kirihara, who approached Ikki with the idea of fighting him in order for Ikki to have fighting abilities recognized by the staff. Ikki had rejected his offer, but Kirihara refused to his refusal and fired arrows at him continuously. Ikki, back in present now, tells Nagi that he was not able to fight back in any way as he thought he would be expelled for giving in to provocation. Nagi then asks Ikki what he would do if things hadn't changed like they did, and Ikki stated that he would keep going to prove his strength no matter what, which prompts Nagi to tell Ikki that he is used to being hurt and that he hopes Ikki will meet someone who hears the screams in his heart. The next day, while Ikki registered for participation in the selection battle, he is approached by Nin Seikayo, who was impressed by his no-hesitant thought on agreeing to the registration form, as so many others do. Ikki then recognizes Nin as a strong fighter as Nin closes the space between her and Ikki in an instant and offers private lessons for Ikki. Kurono, however, interrupts and drags Nin away from Ikki so she can return to her duties as the commentator of the matches. Ikki then goes to the waiting room, where he tries to focus. He closes his eyes and thinks about all the events leading up to this point, becoming more agitated as he thought on, and in an instant it was already time for his match. Ikki and Kirihara are introduced by the announcer, and Kirihara and Ikki both draw out their weapons as the buzzer begins the match. Kirihara summons a forest and uses his area of invisibility, beginning to fire his arrows at Ikki. Ikki is able to figure out the trajectory of the arrows and is able to figure where Kirihara is the moment he fires an arrow. Kirihara then decides to play a game with Ikki and call out where he is going to shoot Ikki. As his game begins, he unveils that he can hide his arrows in his area invisibility, and is able to shoot Ikki down without much effort. Stella, Shizuku, and Nagi are then seen in the stands watching on. Stella wonders why Ikki didn't use his technique the moment the match started, and Nagi explains that he couldn't as Ikki lost his usual state of mind due to his nerves are getting to him. Kirihara then begins to mock Ikki as he continues to shoot arrows from various angles towards Ikki, mocking his very need to win the Sword Art Festival just to graduate. The crowd joins in Kirihara's mockery of Ikki and begin to chant, with Kirihara leading them, worst one, discouraging Ikki even further. Stella, listening to all of the insults and being frustrated more and more by the chanting of the crowd, finally stops the chanting and tells Ikki to get up, encouraging Ikki to fight back against Kirihara. Kirihara then decides to aim at Ikki's brain as Ikki activates his noble art, Itushira. Kirihara fires his arrow, however, it was caught by Ikki, who knew he would aim at his chest instead of his brain, terrifying Kirihara. Nin explains that Ikki was able to take in all the logic of his opponent's technique and use it against them, naming it perfect vision. Kirihara, terrified, fires everything at Ikki, even using his technique Million Rain, but was unsuccessful as Ikki already knew where his arrow was coming as well as him. Ikki then charges at Kirihara, but before he cuts him, Kirihara admits defeat, being terrified of being cut. Ikki stops his attack before cutting Kirihara, commenting that he missed his aim by millimeters and in need of training, possibility of avoiding a cut on Kirihara. The commentator announces Ikki's win. Ikki then collapses and is taken to the infirmary room for treatment. Ikki, at the infirmary, wakes up to find Stella sleeping at his bedside. As Stella, she is flustered by Ikki seeing her drool. Ikki, after Stella had calmed, had wanted to tell her that he liked her too. Stella, however, stops him and instead tells him to close his eyes. After he did so, she kisses him on the cheek. Ikki responds by hugging her, and they each promise each other to fight in the finals of the Sword Art Festival. Stella is seen training in the middle of the night, thinking to herself, confirming that she and Ikki have become lovers. However, Ikki has yet to do anything with her in 2 weeks. Ikki is seen winning another qualification match without much effort. Ikki is then seen in class being asked by girls to teach them swordsmanship, to which Ikki had agreed to do so, although to the jealousy of some of the guys in the class. Ikki and Stella are seen in their room, where Stella compliments Ikki on his generosity to teach already skilled blazers swordsmanship. Stella had tried to ask Ikki if they could do something. However, Ikki falls asleep before she is able to get the words out. Ikki is then seen training the girls' inner core, along with Kagami, who seems to only be taking notes. Ikki's training with the girls is then interrupted by 5 freshmen, who seem jealous of the attention that Ikki was getting from the girls. Ikki, however, is able to quickly defeat the armed blazers, who quickly apologize for their actions as well as become Ikki's new student. Others join in the training as well, as they move the training from in front of the school to a forest. in the forest. While Ikki's students were training, Stella asked Ikki if he was thirsty, hoping to give him some water. Ikki had replied yes to his thirst, but before Stella could give him anything, Shizuku hands him a drink instead, showing up suddenly. Shizuku then volunteers to have sword practice with Ikki as well, and then points out that Stella had 2 drinks behind her, to which she lies and says she brought them for herself, drinking while sobbing at the same time, although no one else notices. Stella offered to learn from Ikki as well, but Ikki is hesitant to do so, causing Stella to leave angrily. Along the way, Stella runs into Nagi, who gives her a game. Back in her room, Stella begins to play the game, which allows her to go out with a person who looks a lot like Ikki. While playing, she expresses her wish to be with Ikki and do things with Ikki. Just then, Ikki comes in and invites Stella to the pool so she can help with tomorrow's training. Ikki then starts to explain why he was hesitant in training Stella in swordsmanship. While on the bus to go to the pool, Stella remembers what Ikki said, saying that he could not teach her anything with her already sharpened sword. As well, he wanted her to surpass his imagination in her capabilities. Stella then looks at a sleeping Ikki, lovingly, alerting Kagami, who had seen the gaze. The group reaches the pool and begin their lung capacity training, while a girl with long black hair looks on from afar. Although not in the group, Stella also participates in the training by herself, focusing on her inner self. She is, however, interrupted by Kagami, who reveals to have knowledge about Stella and Ikki's relationship. Kagami confirmed this by tricking Stella into saying it herself. Stella then reveals that although she and him haven't done anything as lovers, she would like to do something. Kagami then pushes Stella to do it herself, the opposite of Nagi's advice to Shizuku, which was happening at the same time. Ikki and Stella are then left alone under a fountain, where they ended up bickering due to Stella's misunderstanding before they reconcile by revealing what they want to do with each other, which is kissing, as they kiss to reaffirm their relationship. While on the bus to go back to Hagan Academy, Ikki and Stella both receive their next opponent messages at the same time, which are both members of the student council, Ikazuchi Seiju and Renrin Tamaru. Meanwhile, inside the student council office, Seiju and Renrin are seen preparing for their next fight against their relative opponents, being very excited about their matchup. Ikki has already started his match with Renrin, as she already uses her mock grid noble art, which allows her to accumulate speed, allowing her to circle around Ikki, at speeds going faster than sonic sound, leaving Ikki in the middle of the arena. While Renrin was fighting Ikki, Seiju is fighting against Stella using his weight accumulation, which allows him to make his device heavier with every swing. He then uses his crescendo axe to slash down at Stella, and at the very same time Renrin uses her black bird technique against Ikki. Ikki, however, is able to dodge Renrin, and Stella is able to break Seiju's device and uses her flames to put Seiju down, giving both of them the win. After their respective matches, Shizuku is seen trying to get close with Ikki once again, even offering to nurse him overnight, annoying Stella. Nagi then asks how long Ikki is willing to let it go on, and Ikki decides to acknowledge that he has a stalker, much to the shock of both Stella and Shizuku. The stalker is revealed to be a girl who tries to explain her actions, but then ends up falling over the handrail and land into the water below, causing her to become unconscious. At the hospital, the girl introduces herself as Ayase Ayatsuji, prompting Ikki to ask her if she was related to Kaido Ayatsuji, which she was, getting Ikki excited. Shizuku explained to a confused Stella that Kaido was a master swordsman who many tournaments, although he himself was not a blazer. Ikki asks what had happened to Kaido, as he hasn't heard anything about him recently, and Ayase confirms that he is hospitalized. Shizuku then asks Ayase why she was stalking Ikki in the first place, and Ayase explains that she needed to figure a way to ask Ikki for help on her swordplay, but was too shy to ask. Ikki then decides to invite Ayase to his sword practice match. During his training session with Ayase, out in the forest with everyone else he deduced that Ayase believes she is not getting any better is because she is not reaching Kaido's level. He further explains that she could not imitate Kaido simply because of different genders. Ikki suggests a change in stance, but warns her that when he does change her stance that she could never go back to her father's ways, to which Ayase agreed to. Ikki then begins to touch her all over in order to fix her stance. Fixing her stance, Ikki demonstrates how much the stance improves Ayase's ability by having her defend much quicker against his attack, Ikki and Ayase, after training, then walk home together, along with the others, and Ikki apologizes for him touching Ayase so much. Ayase, however, didn't mind, and even told Ikki that he reminded her of her father Kaido. Stella asks Shizuku, who were both fairly behind Ikki and Ayase, if she was bothered by Ayase holding Shizuku. Shizuku stated that Ayase was not flirting with Ikki, and she didn't care since it made Ikki happy, even if she was not his partner. Ikki and Stella are then seen in their room, and Stella confessed that she felt a little insecure when Ikki was touching Ayase. Ikki then confirms to Stella that the only person he will ever like is her. Stella and Ayase are seen sparring against each other with wooden swords, and Stella compliments Ayase's ability. Ikki, Stella and Ayase all then go out to a diner. Ayase converses with Ikki and mutters to herself during that she wants to take back something that was taken from her. Just then students from another school, one of which was named Kurado, who seemed to know Ayase as well as the others as well. Kurado then decides to apologize for interrupting their meal and pours Ikki a drink in order to apologize. While Ikki tried to drink from the glass, Kurado then hits Ikki with a bottle, smashing it. One of the people at the restaurant wanted to try and call the police, but was stopped by a blonde woman with a sun hat and parasol. Stella gets angry at Kurado and wanted to fight him, however Ikki stops her, smiling and saying that it was an accident. Kurado decides to leave after spitting on him, figuring he wouldn't be able to get a reaction from him. Stella asked why Ikki had purposely not dodged Kurado's first hit, and Ikki replied that it would have complicated things, and Ikki knew that he wouldn't be able to easily defeat Kurado. A boy from Hagun Academy then appears and explains who Kurado was, the ace on Danro Academy, as well as one of the best 8 in 7 Sword Art Festival. The blonde-haired woman also joins in the conversation and states that she would have held everyone down if Ikki had retaliated. Ikki had told Stella that the boy was Utakata and the blonde-haired woman was Kanata, both from the student council. Utakata then decides to heal Ikki's wounds. Ikki, Stella and Ayase then walk home, and Ikki comments that the mark Utakata healed felt as though it was gone. Stella then asks Ayase who Kurado was, and Ayase is unable to tell him as her student ID rings, and both Ikki and Ayase find out that their opponent will be each other. The next morning, Ikki, Stella and Shizuku find that Ayase has not come to practice. After practice, Ikki meets up with Nagi, who believes that because Ayase has no chance in the match tomorrow, she will try something before the match. Ikki then shows Nagi his student ID, where it displayed a message from Ayase wanting to meet him alone. Nagi then warns Ikki that if he does plan on meeting her, plan on ending his friendship with her as well. Ikki, however, is confident that no matter what he will win, and he will keep his promise to Stella. Late into the night, Ikki goes to the roof where Ayase is, giving a very ghastly smile to Ikki's presence. Ikki and Ayase are seen on the roof in the middle of the night, and Ayase asks Ikki what he would do if he fought against someone he could never beat. Ikki replies by stating that no matter what he would fight fairly. Ayase, however, disagrees with Ikki, stating that it was justice with no results and did not matter. Ayase then draws her device, and the fence behind her somehow comes apart as she falls through it, falling off the roof. Ikki yells after a falling Ayatsuji and uses his Itushura to catch her, before she falls to the ground, landing them both safely into the water nearby. They both climb out of the water, and Ikki asks Ayase why she had done that. Ayase tells Ikki that she wanted him to use his Itushura, knowing that he wouldn't be able to use it during their match in 10 hours. Stella is then seen sleeping, dreaming about Ikki, when her dream is interrupted by a worn-out Ikki who falls directly on top of her. Stella assumes that it is a Japanese nighttime sneak, but then realizes something being wrong as Ikki was not moving. Ikki, the next morning, wakes up in the hospital bed, finding Shizuku, Stella and Nagi there when he had awoken. Ikki tries to explain to them what had happened last night, but is interrupted by Kurono, who wanted Ikki to come with her. At Kurono's office, Kurono figured that Ikki had something to do with the destroyed side of the building, to which Ikki admits to but wouldn't give the reason why. Ikki then asks Kurono about Ayase, and she decides to tell him about what had happened to her father 2 years ago, when he could no longer hold a sword after losing in a one-on-one match to Kurado, giving him all of the land and gym Ayatsuji once held. Ikki asks what happened to Kaido, and Kurono states that he has been unconscious since that match. During Kurono's explanation, Ayase is seen with her unconscious father, thinking about her father's words of never losing her pride as a swordsman. She then remembers one of her challenges against Kurado, in which Kurado tells her to never come back. Ayase then believes if she could go to the Seven Sword Art Festival, she could fight Kurado once again. Kaido is then seen talking in his comatose state, apologizing. Ikki and his friends are then seen outside, wondering what to do after hearing Ayase's story. Ikki decides he will fight valiantly against Ayase, but before then, he asks Stella to go with him somewhere. The arena where Ikki and Ayase's match will take place is seen as the announcer, Hangetsu Tsukayomi, introduces herself as well as her co-announcer Yuyuri Orki. The announcers then introduce the combatants Ikki and Ayase as they enter the ring. They both draw out their respective devices as the match begins. Ikki quickly jumps against Ayase, however, he is somehow cut in multiple areas instead. Ayase does it once again to Ikki's back and then charges at him. Ayase explains to Ikki that he was being cut by her noble art mark of the wind. Ayase also explains that opening up wounds was her device's ability. Ayase and Ikki both think about the ability, as Ayase had cut the area before the start of the match, leaving behind many, unseen, marks that would cause whirlwind slashes on Ikki when activated the moment he was close to one. Nagi in the stands figures out Ayase's traps and knew that it was illegal to do something such as that, which would give him the automatic win when it was found out. Ayase is then seen noticing that Yuyuri hasn't noticed what she had done, and wonders if Ikki had. She then tries to use Mark of the Wind against Ikki. He, however, is able to dodge it much to Ayase's surprise. However, Ayase uses her Hizyum to make a little cut big on Ikki's arm, causing him to drop to one knee. Ayase then decides to go after a vital spot, and then rushes him attacking very fiercely. Ayase nearly gets to Ikki, however Ikki is able to stop Ayase's attack with the hilt of his sword, called Irregular Guard. Ikki then smiles at Ayase, seeing that she was who he had always thought she was. Ikki and Stella are then seen with Yuyuri before the match, with Ikki telling Yuyuri that Ayase will definitely cheat during the match. Ikki then asks Yuyuri to look the other way when she cheats, explaining that he wants to believe that he can save his friendship with Ayase. Ikki then tells Ayase that her swordsmanship and style was off, ignoring not only what Ikki taught her but what she could already do before, and states that because her own mind is lost her swordplay suffers. Ayase ignores what he says and believes what she is doing is the only way. Ikki then decides to bring back Ayase's pride with his strongest as he charges at Ayase, unable to use Itushura. As Ikki charges, Ayase tries to use Mark of the Wind, however Ikki is able to dodge every attack. Ayase slams her sword through the ground, causing an explosion and tries to attack Ikki. However, it was revealed to be an afterimage of Ikki as he activates his fourth sword Shinkiro, and they both slash each other, with Ayase falling afterwards. Shizuku then notices that Ikki had switched to his phantom form, before cutting Ayase. Ayase tries to get back up, but is unable to, and begins to cry out of frustration. Ikki asks her if her soul was really in this match, without her pride. Ayase's device disappears and Ayase admits that Ikki was right and admits defeat. After the match, Ikki offers Ayase to help her get back her pride. Ayase wonders why he would do this and Ikki responds by telling her that the reason is that they are friends. Ikki then offers his hand to Ayase, with Ayase noticing the calluses on his hands just like her father. Ayase then takes Ikki's hand and asks Ikki for help. Ayase's father, Kaido Ayatsuji, retired during Ayase's junior high years due to heart problems. Although he was unable to hold a sword properly, he did keep instructing Ayase and some other students. While training Ayase to use the Tenimohu, Kaido had told Ayase to never forget that Ayatsuji's sword style is to protect people. Ayase, Ikki, and Stella are talking about Kurado, a man who attacks local schools unofficially. Ayase tells Ikki and Stella of the day Kurado had won against Kaido. It was during a stormy night that Kaido and Kurado were going against each other in the Ayatsuji dojo. Kurado was fighting violently and was able to knock Kaido off his feet. However, Kaido did not back down and continued to fight no matter how badly beaten he was, believing he could win, even telling Ayase to not interrupt the fight. Kaido then prepared his secret technique against Kurado, and it had nearly hit him. However, Kaido had begun to cough up blood and was unable to hold the sword, falling to the ground as well, ultimately giving Kurado the win. Winning the dojo, Kurado tells Ayase to pack her things as the dojo no longer belongs to her, leaving an angry Ayase holding her beloved, badly beaten father. After Ayase finishes her story, the group arrives at the now in disrepair Ayatsuji dojo, now run by Kurado and his gang. They go up the stairs and find some members outside of the dojo. Ikki asks them to tell them where Kurado was. Ikki, Ayase and Stella, when searching, find Kurado on the couch, and Kurado instantly recognizes Ikki, who challenges him to a duel in order to regain the dojo. Kurado, seeming skeptical, asks Ikki to show his worth to be his opponent, for which Ikki then shows a skeptical Kurado his gang's student ID to prove that he has beaten them all. Kurado then accepts Ikki's challenge and brings out his device Orochimaru, and Ikki draws his Intetsu and the duel begins. Kurado attacks Ikki viciously, not giving Ikki any time to counter him. Ikki had tried to counter, timing his counterattack perfectly, but to no avail as Kurado was able to easily block it. Kurado then activates his noble art Jakutsujin, allowing him to extend his device and allow his sword attack Ikki from different directions at a distance. Ikki is able to get through Kurado's attack and was able to dodge an attack from behind. Ikki tries to stab Kurado, but Kurado is even able to dodge that attack, and Ikki figures out how Kurado is able to dodge him. Ikki is then pushed back by Kurado after ending Jakutsujin, who is able to surprise Ikki by changing the direction of his hits so suddenly. Ikki is able to dodge the attack but does get cut in the process. Ikki then reveals his understanding of Kurado's power, revealing that Kurado's true strength comes from his inhuman reflexes, having the speed of his reflexes at 0.05 seconds compared to a normal human's at 0.3 seconds. Ikki and Stella's reflexes are at 0.1 seconds. Kurado confirms Ikki's explanation and reveals the actual name of his technique as marginal counter. Kurado then uses another technique, Hibagami, which attacks Ikki twice with his device. Ikki uses his irregular guarding to stop a direct hit from Kurado's technique, causing Kurado to up the speed of his attack to having 4 attacks simultaneously, allowing to cut Ikki twice in the chest, as he was not able to block all of them. Kurado then begins his violent assault on Ikki, hitting him repeatedly and leaving mark after mark on him. Ikki, however, begins to smile at blocking Kurado's attacks, reminding Ayase of her father during his fight with Kurado. Ayase intends to step in to stop the fight. However, Stella stops her, pointing out that Ikki is having too much fun to be stopped now. Stella then asks Ayase if Kaido actually went down in mortification. Stella points out that maybe Kaido didn't enjoy being a swordsman who was just rusting away and did enjoy it when someone took him on head-on. Ayase then remembers the day of her father's defeat and believes that Kaido was apologizing to Kurado, saying sorry that he had to be the way he was. Stella then notices that Kurado has a weakness, which is that it takes more energy to use marginal counter, causing him to run out of stamina rather quickly than Ikki. Ikki and Kurado, while at a standstill, converse, with Ikki asking Kurado if Kaido smiled like they were now. Kurado confirms that Kaido was smiling, as someone who couldn't smile at a deadly battle wasn't worthy of the title of Last Samurai. Ikki then promises Ayase that he will get back the dojo for her, as he charges at Kurado, who uses his technique, Yamato no Orochi, causing Orochimaru to seem like it has 8 heads. Ikki charges through the heads of Orochimaru, with Kurado realizing that Ikki was using the same technique Kaido had tried to do. Kurado then charges at Ikki, and the two swordsmen collide. Kurado is seen having dropped to one knee and having a cut on his chest, while Ikki is still standing. Ayase then recognizes the technique as the last secret technique, Tenai Muho. Stella then tells Ayase that Ikki used blade steel to learn it, which he did during one of their training sessions, and told not to bother about it as he did the same with Stella. Kurado's device disappears and Kurado asks what Ikki's name was, to which Ikki tells him his name. Kurado then slumps away, telling Ikki they will finish their battle at the Seven Sword Festival. When Ikki asked about the dojo, Kurado told him he could do whatever he wanted with it, stumbling away from the dojo. Ikki's device disappears and he stumbles, but is held up by Stella. Ayase apologizes to Ikki and believed herself to be unworthy to carry on her father's sword style, but Ikki tells her that it was thanks to her memorizing Kaido's sword style to the very last inch that he was able to win, telling her she was the true successor to the last samurai. Ayase then goes outside and puts the Ayatsuji dojo sign back up. Ikki and Stella are seen sitting at the park, where it is revealed that Ayase admitted to cheating during her match with Ikki, resulting in her getting disqualified from the selection battle and being suspended from school for 10 days. Ikki then receives a message from Ayase stating that Kaido was conscious again. Ikki and Stella try to hold hands with each other, but are interrupted by Nagi and Shizuku. Ikki and Stella try to make it look like they are thumb wrestling, resulting in Shizuku and Stella arguing. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Ayase is seen holding her conscious father's hand. Stella and Ikki, after winning their 12th consecutive match, are seen on the bus going to Okutama for training camp, as Kurono described it. Shizuku and Nagi are seen at a train station, as Shizuku is seen being very upset not being able to stop Stella and Ikki from being alone on the trip, as both Nagi and her couldn't go as they had prior engagements. Nagi, however, comforts Shizuku by telling her that it wasn't going to be a romantic getaway for them. Stella and Ikki are seen on the mountain trail. Stella had become cold, as shown by her sneezing. Ikki offers her coat, and as Stella and Ikki had started to become closer to each other, Ikki notices the student council at the top of the mountain. Stella and Renren begin to play badminton, as Ikki and the other members of the student council watch. The student council informs Ikki that they didn't come to just play around, as both them and Ikki and Stella had business. Much to Ikki's surprise, it is revealed that student representatives would be coming in a month, so the student council was asked to clean the lounge they're currently staying in, and Ikki and Stella were roped in. As the student council needed more manpower to clean, Yudakata comments that Tauka had wanted to meet with Ikki, however she was not at the lounge as she is currently running an errand. Shizuku is then seen in the kurogane household. Upon going to her room, she happily sees her cat in her room. Stella and Ikki are then seen outside the lounge asking the student council if they could go to the waterfall. The student council agrees to let them go, but Ikki noticed that Stella seemed a bit off before going off to the waterfall. During the walk, Ikki noticed how weak Stella was becoming. However, Stella brushed it off as though it was nothing and kept on walking to the waterfall. Shizuku is seen in her room, looking at pictures of her brother, along with her cat, when she is interrupted by one of the maids of the kurogane household, telling her that the master, Shizuku's father, was waiting for her. Stella is then seen being very weak and red, being barely able to stand up. Ikki realizes that Stella's condition was serious and decides to take her back to camp, as it begins to pour rain on the two of them. Ikki finds the two of them a cabin, where Ikki is able to create a fire for them. Ikki is then able to figure out Stella's illness to be a fever. Ikki tells Stella to take off her wet clothes, and takes off his clothes in order to make her feel less embarrassed, reminding Stella the first time they met. Ikki then helps Stella take off her clothes, as Stella was barely able to take it off on her own. After Ikki is able to unhook her bra, Stella asks Ikki if he wanted to do it. Ikki refused, however, as he did not want to taint the relationship by having relations with Stella, as he wanted to be able to stand proudly and say he loved her in front of both his and her family. The phone rings and Ikki answers the phone and tells the person over the phone that they were in the mountain lodge. A person outside looking in at the lodge informs a man in a red suit that they have found them, to which the man in the red suit decides it's time to go wild. In the kurogane household, Shizuku goes to her father and wanted to initially leave, as she only came to the household because of her mother's letter, but finds out that her father had forced her mother to write a letter to her, knowing she would not have looked at it if it was from him. Shizuku's father tells her that he wanted to know how she was doing, and even tells her that he is proud of her for winning 12 matches in a row, as she was living up to the kurogane name. Shizuku asks, in protest, if Ikki made him proud as well as he has accomplished the same thing. She then asked if he even cared about Ikki at all, to which Shizuku's father told her that was not the reason, as Shizuku stormed off. Ikki and Stella are then seen, and Ikki walks out of the cabin to find a gigantic golem on top of the cabin. The golem smashes the cabin, but not before Ikki is able to save Stella from its attack. Ikki puts Stella to the ground as he charges at the golem, summoning Intetsu and using the first secret sword, Seigeki, causing the golem to fall apart. However, the golem just used the separated rocks to make more, albeit smaller, versions of itself. Ikki is thrown off to the side by the smaller golems as they move in towards a sickly Stella. Ikki is unable to move, but Stella is saved by the arrival of the student council, as Renren carries Stella away from the golems. Seiju helps fend off the golems as Ikki catches his breath talking with Utakata. Utakata tells Ikki that the golems are most probably controlled by a blazer who is using steel wire, allowing the blazer the ability to control inorganic objects. As Ikki was for a loss at what he should do, a girl with glasses and a Hagan Academy uniform comes in and states that the golems, no matter how far away, are all controlled by wire. The girl, impressively, destroys all the miniature golems and then uses Reikiri to destroy the gigantic one the user of steel wire had created, causing the user of steel wire to be electrocuted. The steel-wired blazer is shown to be with the man in the red suit, who seems to be undeterred in interrupting them. Ikki then recognizes that the person who had decimated the rock golems was the person who was in the top 4 of last year's Seven Sword Art Festival and Hagan Academy's strongest knight, Tauka Taudu. Shizuku is then seen in her room receiving a message on her student ID. It revealed her next preliminary match opponent would be Tauka Taudu herself. Shizuku smiles at the challenge Tauka will provide her. A young Shizuku is seen as Shizuku herself remembers her time at the kurogane household. She had remembered that because she was a very talented blazer, she could get away with whatever she wanted, being disgusted by not only humans in general but herself as well. It all had changed when a young Ikki slapped her and told her she was wrong, even though he was punished for such actions by the adults. Shizuku had then decided that no matter what happens, she would follow her beloved brother ignorant to what his situation was actually like. Shizuku is then seen going to the ring of her preliminary match. Stella, Ikki, and Alice are seen reading a newspaper article, which believed that the rock puppet who had attacked them was an actual living giant. Ikki tells Alice that they were unable to find who had sent the rock doll. They then begin to talk about Tauka, and Stella is worried about Shizuku, as Tauka is a lightning user. Alice, however, points out that Shizuku is able to manipulate the impurities of water so it doesn't conduct electricity. This relieves Stella a little, but Ikki is still worried about Shizuku, wanting her to win, but believing that her being unhurt was more important. Shizuku is then seen in the shower, where her train of thought is interrupted by Stella, who seemed to be worried about her. After Stella had ran off, Alice appears and takes Shizuku outside to talk. While outside on a bench, Alice tells Shizuku about Stella and Ikki's worries about her facing against Tauka, prompting Shizuku to want to win against Tauka, even so Ikki will see her as a person who can fight alongside him. Shizuku is then introduced to the ring by the announcer, who also introduces a disinterested Nin as commentator. She then introduces her opponent Tauka Taudu, as both Shizuku and Tauka draw out their devices and the match begins. At the beginning of the match, neither moves an inch. As Nin explains, both of them understand how critical this moment is. Ikki further explains why Shizuku isn't moving, explaining Tauka's deadly technique Reikiri, something that even the Seven Sword Art champion stayed out of its range. Ikki then believes that Shizuku will stay out of Tauka's range, as she excels in a long-range battle style. Shizuku then uses Taudo Hygen, which freezes the water Shizuku had conjured, freezing the entire arena. Shizuku then uses Suiraden, a move that uses water slashes, on a moving Tauka. Shizuku jumped away from a closing in Tauka and activated Shoha Suiron, causes a huge gush of water, making a type of wave. The water in the wave is then used to attack Tauka. However, Tauka is able to counter by slashing lightning against each attack. Tauka then begins to slide on the ice, and uses the advantage she has over Shizuku against her as she forces Shizuku to continuously make ultra-pure water. Tauka, however, is caught in some ice and Shizuku launches a huge ice pillar on top of Tauka. Tauka, however, destroys the ice by plunging her sword, still in its scabbard, through the ice. The crowd becomes excited about the prospect of the match, seeing it as being neck and neck, although Ikki sees it differently. Shizuku begins to think about how Tauka was able to best her trap, believing that Tauka may be seeing something that she can't. Yudakata is seen at the match talking with Kanata, and he admits that the match seems to be very close, from long range at least. Shizuku is then pushed back by Tauka, but is still able to launch slashes of water at her, although it is easily blocked by Tauka. Shizuku thinks to herself, but Tauka takes advantage of her second of thought and attacks her, being able to completely envelop her in lightning. It is however revealed to be just a clone, made of water. She is however cut by Tauka's sword. Tauka then begins an onslaught on Shizuku, and Shizuku is barely able to keep up. The commentator looks for Nin for her thoughts, but she seems to have disappeared. Ikki notices that Tauka is using the same technique as Nin had done when they met before Ikki's first preliminary match against Kirihara. Nin then appears and confirms Ikki's assessment and tells him that it is called nukiashi, a combination of stealthy steps and breathing techniques from an ancient martial art. Ikki explains that nukiashi is confusing Shizuku's subconscious into registering her movements as unnecessary information. Kurono then appears, stating that what Ikki said was right, and explains that both Tauka and Nin learned from the same master, Nango. Ikki then states that unless Shizuku has something to break Reikiri, she will lose, prompting Stella to cheer Shizuku on. Shizuku smiles at hearing Stella cheering her on, although she doesn't admit it, and uses her water to get rid of her cuts, thinking that she wants to go to the Seven Sword Art Festival along with everyone else, getting ready for her final confrontation of Tauka. Shizuku uses her abilities to attack Tauka, using the flasks of water she brought with her to create even more ice, which Tauka slides on into close range with Shizuku. Tauka cuts Shizuku with her sword, but it is revealed to be a clone, and Tauka looks behind her to see several more clones. Tauka cuts each one of the clones, and surprised as Shizuku uses Byakuya Kekai to cause fog in the arena, allowing her to be the only one to move freely. Shizuku then uses Hisujin, a technique that allows her to cover her own device in water. She uses the water from the clones to keep attacking Tauka as Shizuku comes in and tries to finish her off. However, Tauka sees through the plan and uses Reikiri before Shizuku is able to attack her. The fog clears and Shizuku falls, ending the match in Tauka's victory. Shizuku is seen in the hospital in the middle of the night, finding Alice, Stella, and Ikki with her. Shizuku asks them to leave, and Stella and Ikki respect her request, although Alice stayed. While outside, in the hallway, Ikki is seen happy that Shizuku had become strong. In Shizuku's room, Alice holds Shizuku tightly and tells her she did well. Not being someone Shizuku wants to protect or beat, Shizuku begins to cry in Alice's arms. Itsuki is then seen in his office, finding out that Shizuku had lost. The man in the suit is seen beside him, wondering what he should do about the problem, to which Itsuki gave him the go-ahead to do as he pleases. Stella is seen participating in a preliminary match, defeating her opponent easily, winning her 14th battle. After the match, Stella and Ikki are walking in the forest, where Stella reminds Ikki of their promise to each other, fighting each other in the finals of the Seven Sword Art Festival. Ikki and Stella then kiss each other on the lips, not knowing there was a cameraman in the forest taking a picture of such a kiss. Ikki is seen in Kurono's office, speaking with Kurono herself. Kurono asks Ikki if he knew of a man named Akaza, to which he replied he did know. Kurono tells Ikki that he is part of the Night Ethics Committee, and he has been around the school. Kurono worries that he may try something underhanded, and Ikki tries to help her, but Kurono refused, as it was her job, as director, to protect the students. Ikki and Stella then go to the student council room, being invited by the student council themselves, coming into a room to find a falling Tauka. Tauka berates both Yudakata and Renrin or not putting away their stuff, and she is met with a very lackadaisical response. Tauka then notices Stella and Ikki and introduces herself. The student council as well as Ikki and Stella go to an orphanage, and while the children surrounded Tauka with glee, Yudakata tells Ikki that she and him used to be in a place like this and visit place like. Yudakata tries to explain why Ikki and Stella were invited, but the kids remember seeing Stella on TV and crowd around her, and Yudakata states that he knew they would be excited about meeting her. The group spends the day playing with the kids at the orphanage, while Ikki, Tauka, and Yudakata cook. Ikki thanks Tauka for saving him as well as fighting his sister. They then talk about Tauka's noble arts accuracy being increased by her taking off her glasses, naming it reverse sight. After preparing lunch, Ikki is seen staring at Tauka, not being able to take his eyes off of her, as she serves the kids lunch. Utakata explains it is because he was seeing the core of Tauka. He goes on to explain that in the orphanage they grew up in, the atmosphere wasn't good. There was even a child that was nearly killed by his own parents. He was very aggressive and always hit Tauka, but she never gave up on him, and eventually he was able to regain his human emotions again. Utakata is even reminded of Tauka's saying and tells Ikki that she wants to prove that anyone can be great no matter how underprivileged they are by succeeding as Reikiri. Ikki then questions his own self what his source of strength is. Ikki and Stella then return to find their friends running towards them, informing them about a newspaper that has exposed their relationship. The man in the suit, revealed to be Akaza, then arrives telling him that he has a hearing with the ethics committee. Ikki agrees and gets inside the car to go with him to the hearing, as the two of them soon arrive at the ethic committee building. Ikki is then seen at the hearing where the members of the ethic committee begin to question him about his relationship with Stella. Nin is seen at Kurono's office as they discuss the situation at hand. Kurono explains that a branch can't just kick a knight out of the tournament. Nin then suspects that this is the entire reason why Akaza has done what he has. After his first hearing, Ikki is sent into a small holding cell, being informed that his hearing will resume tomorrow morning. Stella is seen defeating her 15th opponent very easily again, and leaves the stage to a whispering crowd about her affair with Ikki. Stella in her own dorm looks on to the top bunk, where Ikki used to sleep, missing him very much. Ikki is then seen walking with Akaza in handcuffs, where Ikki finds out that he will be having his selection battle at the ethics committee building. Yuyuri is seen escorting Ikki's opponent. Yuyuri tries to talk with Ikki, however, the security guard escorting Ikki would not allow it. Akaza begins the match. Kagami, at Hagan Academy, reads aloud that Ikki has won his matches at the ethics committee, narrowly, to Stella, Alice, and Shizuku. Stella begins to doubt her relationship with Ikki, and believes it might be better if she broke up with Ikki, causing Shizuku to hit Stella with her water. Shizuku tells Stella why Ikki is doing this, as he doesn't want his relationship with Stella to be stained with their lies. As days pass, Ikki is seen fighting against his opponent. In one of his fights, he drops to the ground due to fatigue. Yuyuri goes to him and slips him a paper, using her illness of coughing up blood as a distraction. Ikki goes back to the cell and opens the paper to find a lock of Stella's hair, giving him relief. Ikki then tells Akaza he wishes to speak with his father. Although he initially refused, he is informed that Itsuki has requested to speak with Ikki. He is then forced to allow this, and Akaza believed that Kurono was the reason for this. Ikki goes to Itsuki's office to talk with his father. Itsuki recognizes that Ikki has won his selection matches. Ikki then asks his father if he wins the Seven Sword Art Festival, would he recognize him. Itsuki then tells Ikki that he wasn't recognized not because he was weak, but because it was futile to teach him anything, as it would probably end with mediocre results, like the ones Ikki is producing now. Ikki then realizes that his father didn't hate him, he just didn't believe he could do anything, causing Ikki to cry and even dishearten him, realizing that the bond between him and his father was broken from the beginning. Ikki is then seen, very fatigued, fighting his preliminary battles one after the other, becoming more and more tired, thinking that it was foolish for him to ever believe that he would ever get his father's approval. Ikki is then informed that his final opponent, for the preliminary rounds, will be Tauka Taudu. Akaza states they will no longer pursue Ikki if he wins in the public eye. Inside his cell, Ikki starts to question the worth of his strength after meeting his father. Meanwhile, Tauka is seen talking with the director of the orphanage she was staying at before Shizuku arrives at her room, under Tauka's request to discuss on Ikki's issue. Back inside her own room, Shizuku talks about her discussion with Tauka to Alice, worrying about whether she should ask Ikki to forfeit his match or not. Inside her own room, Tauka also questions Utakata on whether or not she can accept the duel with pride because of the scenario behind it before deciding to do her best. Outside the school building, Stella is seen training. Ikki is still seen struggling. Then, the final day of the selection match begins with a large crowd and is broadcasted live on TV as a condition from the Federation in order to let Ikki fight in the school. there will be 6 matches to determine the 6 representatives of the school for the 7-star battle festival. But the most awaited fight is Ikki versus Tauka to do. Ikki is shown desperately trying to get to the school because Akaza ditched him. While he is walking, he is fading in and out of consciousness, thinking about the words his grandfather told him. Shizuku brings him out of it and shows him the school that is cheering for him. Ikki's spirit is raised and he walks to the field. Meanwhile, Nin's master shows up to watch the fight. Ikki and Tauka are introduced, and they both tell each other how much respect they have for each other and other complimentary and resolutions. Ikki immediately uses his sword technique, followed by Tauka immediately using hers. Tauka decided she'd fight him head-on, instead of taking the coward's way and just outlasting him. Just before they landed their blows, however, Ikki used an even greater technique, causing blood to burst from his body. When the dust settles, Tauka collapses, and Ikki is pronounced the victor. Outside, we see Kurado listening to the announcement, smile, and then walk away. Akaza is outraged, and leaves to take care of him himself, while Nin, her master, and Kurono talk about what his power makes him. Ikki is desperately keeping himself from collapsing so he can tell Stella something. As Akaza makes his way onto the field to finish Ikki off, Stella knocks him aside and keeps Ikki from fainting. Ikki then proposes to her on live television, which she gladly accepts. Back at the Kurogane household, Itsuki talks with the Vermilion Emperor about keeping their children out of the corrupt adult affairs. At the academy, 6 students are shown to have been picked to be representatives. This includes Alice, Stella, Kanata, Ikki, and the Hagyr sisters. Ikki is then appointed leader of the representatives by Tauka.